Welcome back to another episode of Amateurist Podcast. I'm Logan.
I'm Rhett.
On today's episode, we're going to go college basketball recap post-feast week. We had a crazy feast week, a lot of big upsets, surprising results in all these crazy tournaments. So we're going to have some hot takes and takeaways. We're going to discuss some surprises of the season, early surprises, good and bad. He's going to get into some people or programs that he feels sorry for, and that's what we're going to start with. So let's get into it.
Well, it's two people. It's a duo. It's a deadly duo. They're going to go second and third, maybe first and second in the NBA draft, and that's Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper. They have proved they are NBA ready. There's nothing left for them to prove at this level except maybe defensively and decision making, and they are surrounded by a collection of players who really you can't trust. They're not proven, that they don't add anything. It's the worst surrounding of two uber stars I've ever seen, and I feel bad for them.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of my takeaways. I said that Cooper Flag is the number one pick is not a done deal right now. Dylan Harper especially. Ace Bailey had a really good game yesterday against A&M, but Harper is averaging on the season 23.8 points per game, which is third in the country as a true freshman. Also, he's got 4.5 boards, 4.5 assists, shooting efficiently from the field. Yesterday was an exception. But yeah, and then also Ace Bailey showing that tough shot making ability. But right now, I think Harper's just maybe the best guard in the country, period.
Yeah, it's not a hot take. The player who is ahead of Dylan Harper in scoring is number 2 on my list. Free Eric Dixon.
Hashtag save Eric Dixon.
Oh, it hurts me. I really thought the pairing of Luka Poplar and Eric Dixon were going to gel. I think they complement each other, and Poplar has been on a downward trend since the start of last season. I'm ready for the Jordan Longino era to end. He's a complimentary player, and he does his job. But to me, he's sort of symbolic of the failures of this program. And if Kyle Neptune's seat isn't hottest in the country, I'd like to see the one that is.
The burners are on. At the moment, like you said, Dixon's averaging 25 a game, shooting 53% from the field, 6 boards. What we got from three ball? He's shooting 54 from 3 on decent volume. I mean, but the issue is the Villanova Wildcats are 4-4 with losses to Columbia, St. Joe's. Yeah. But yeah, hashtag save.
Virginia. Just
at this point, yeah.
Maybe a quad 2 loss.
Yeah. But yeah, hashtag save Eric Dixon.
The third is any refs of the UConn Huskies going forward for 2 reasons. One, for such an accomplished coach, Danny Hurley is a nut job on the sidelines. He just loses his mind over every call, and what that does is it teaches young players, his players, other players that watch him, that they can complain about every call, and it's just not right. It's a horrible, horrible trend. And then the comments he made during the Maui Classic about this one ref that he didn't even know he was a ref, it's punching down, and it's completely beneath a coach of his stature. It is abhorrent. You may not like the call, and it was a bad call, but you cost your team by flopping on the floor like a fish. I don't understand how you can be so talented and do such a great job winning back-to-back titles and be so mentally unstable. It's not something you learn from your father, and it's a shame.
Yeah, I mean, that is one of my takes, is that UConn will not be three-peating this year after their performance at Maui, where they lost 3 games in a row to all lesser. I mean, it looked like they were going to be lesser opponents. They lost to Colorado, who aren't very great. Memphis proved to be a tough opponent, and then they dropped the game to Dayton by 20.
Yeah.
This is not the UConn of the past 2 years. They have multiple issues. Caravan is who everyone knows. He's a great player, but Mahaney, we thought he was going to come in as an impact transfer. He got benched that tournament. Defensively, he's not there. You got Samson Johnson, who's supposed to be your starting big man. He fouls out almost every game. And you got Solo Ball is a good up and coming player, but he's young, doesn't have a lot of experience under his belt. Same thing with Jalen Stewart. Harris Reed's solid, but Denny Hurley. Yeah, Hurley's a basketball savant, but and great coach motivator, but he cost himself in that first game, and then that just led slippery slope where he dropped the next two. And I think they're 5-3 at the moment, but they have a gauntlet coming up. They play Baylor next, Texas, which is a good team, Gonzaga, Xavier, who was ranked. They will drop out of the rankings, and then they get into Big East play, which is where they should
do fine,
make up the ground they lost. But to end non-con play, they got 3 really tough opponents, which could be under 500 going into Big East play.
Yeah, and another problem they have is they don't have an alpha, and by that I mean an alpha score.
Karaban is a great do-it-all player, but he's not going to average 20.
No,
he's an NBA player, but he's not 20 like they had with Klingon last year, or just an overwhelming. Well, they also had Sonogo the prior year, but just an overwhelming collection of NBA talent, which they don't have this year.
Karaban is a very, very poor man's Cooper Flag.
All right.
He rebounds.
Yeah.
He passes well. He's not a big time scorer, and it defends his position.
He's very versatile. They have McNeely, who could be that go-to scorer, but he doesn't do a lot off the bounce. He's a good player. He's played pretty well, but just the depth.
He's up and down.
Yeah, he had one not so great game in that Maui tournament, but the depth just isn't there like years prior.
No.
You got anyone else you feel sorry for?
I got a couple more.
All right.
I feel bad for the 3 Duke recruits, Patrick Ngongba, Darren Harris, and Evans.
Yep.
Who are stuck behind either better recruits.
They're stuck behind this. Isaiah Evans is stuck behind Cooper Flag.
Right.
Ngongba stuck behind Kaman Malawak. And Darren Harris is stuck behind Knipple. So, there you go.
Yeah.
And they're not better than any of the guys in front of them.
No, and I think kids have to reevaluate. Look, do I want to be in a class of 6? Because it's not just 6; it's returnees.
Yeah.
And Duke has relied heavily on, the older, experienced guys, rightly so, Gillis and Brown and Zion James. And it's delaying their career. And I don't know if they stay because next year Duke is bringing in a monster class. I feel bad for them. I don't feel sad for them. I feel bad for them.
And I'll tell you what about I don't feel bad for them because they made a poor decision with their recruitment. This happens every year. I used to happen with Kentucky at Cal. It happens at Duke. When you have a class of 6 freshmen, they're not all going to play. And you look at the people they're also bringing in. Isaiah Evans, 5-star. Ngongba, 5-star. Darren Harris, 4-star. But then you look, they have the number 1 player in the country ahead of me, right? They have the EYBL leading scorer on Knipple ahead of me, right? They have a 7-2 Olympian in front of me. And I did call in our preview that I did not think Ngongba was going to get rotation minutes. You were very high on him.
And we're not going to know.
You're also high on Darren Harris.
We're not going to know.
Yeah, I agree, but also I just think you have to look at it. And maybe their goal is to play 2 years, like a Miles Bridges at Michigan State, where you raise your stock and then boom, your lottery. But
nothing's guaranteed next year. They'll bring
in a tough class too.
The
Boozers.
Yeah.
Yeah. You think you're playing over the Boozers? I think 1 or 2 of those guys will definitely transfer. But you can't really blame
Coach
Shire decision for playing good players.
No.
They've looked pretty solid. But I will say about Duke, one of my takeaways, this Duke team does not have enough experience to make a deep run in the tournament.
Disagree.
Well, we have seen it in their last. They have 3 losses, I believe, at the moment, and all 3 of them came down to experience. We had Cooper Flag, who played amazing games, and then he had turnover against Kentucky, and then in the game they have 2 losses, And Kansas, he had another crucial turnover. Actually, Knipple also had a crucial turnover. So I think those 2 are amazing players, but they are 7 games into their college career, which explains the turnovers. But by the time tournaments come, it's not like they're going to have a bevy of experience under their belt.
They will.
30 games is not enough. We have seen it. When's the last time a freshman-led team won it all? Well, 2015 Duke.
Yeah, or Carmelo. But
that was 2003. We want to use that.
Yeah, no, but I think they will improve. I think that's the key is this season will test them, give them experience. The ACC isn't great, but it's not awful either. So, yes, they had some early season losses.
I mean, they're not bad losses by any stretch. They lost to Kentucky and the number one team in the country, Kansas.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, first of all, Flagg's supposed to be a senior in high school.
Yeah.
So that's another thing against him with the youth. I mean, great player, Knipple, great player, and I'm not taking away from what they will be in the NBA, but I just think at the college level, you need experience, and they don't have that.
And I think we're going to see at the end of the season, they do have 5 very experienced players in Proctor and
Proctor, Foster's good experience, Gillis, Zion James, the kid from Syracuse, Brown, but like one of those guys starts.
I'm not ready to write the death sentence for Duke this year. I just am not.
I'm doing my hot takes and takeaways, and that was my hot take.
There you go. So I feel not sorry for 2 coaches that I think we underrated. Greg Gard.
We did underrate Greg Gard in our Big Ten preview.
And Porter Moser.
Oklahoma.
So both teams have overachieved on paper. You look at these teams and you're like, no way.
Yeah.
These 2 coaches have time and time and time again proved that's the reason for their success.
Yeah.
System development.
Well, I have to say 2 things. First, shout out to Oklahoma. They won the Baja Mar in a very strange field.
Yeah.
Now, with the Oklahoma thing, it wasn't as big as an overlook as the Wisconsin. I'll touch on that in a second. But Jeremiah Fierce has been excellent.
Unbelievable.
As the reclass up freshman point guard for them. His brother has not been excellent at Michigan State.
Yeah.
But that's a big surprise there. But to the bigger surprise, and we was just an overlook on our part, John Tonji at Wisconsin.
Yes.
Because he didn't play last year.
Yeah.
So he just completely was off the radar, and he's just been the guy for Wisconsin.
Yeah,
he had a 40-point game, 30-point game. So, yes, that was definitely our bad, but we did overlook their best player because he didn't play last year.
Right. The last one I'm going to say is I feel sorry for me. I, as you know, I'm a fan of Villanova, an alum, and an alum of another team that is awful. And it appears that, I don't know what it appears. This team is now 3-4, having just rewarded Charleston Southern with its first Division I win, giving up 80 points, which is also the most points they've scored Division I. Hence the problem. They do not defend. Pretty sure at my advanced age, I'm getting double digits on some of these guys. I've seen plays where the guy doesn't even have a move. He just goes around somebody.
Yeah.
And they don't have an alpha. Not if Nigel Pack is your alpha, which he is, oof, he's too up and down and takes way too many nut job shots.
Yeah.
Guys they brought in, it looked like, wow, these are experienced, accomplished guys. Lynn Kidd can't find the basket if you gave him a map. He is, and when he does get in the low post against smaller guys, they refuse to feed him or can't feed him because they're completely awful at it. The fundamentals of this team are so bad. They were out-rebounded off on the offensive boards by a massive margin by Drake, and then Oklahoma State, at least it kind of changed in the second half, but they were way ahead. They don't defend. It's just abysmal. They don't box out. These are accomplished freshman players like Jalil Bethea and others who don't box out. It's absurd. I am apoplectic. I mean, it was bad enough losing 3 in a row. Fine.
4.
No, I mean, going into the Charleston Southern game. That's a get healthy. They paid them to be there.
Yeah, they paid the.
It's at Miami.
Yeah.
You just got drilled 3 games in a row. You can't get up for it.
Yeah.
And sad to say, we're only going to have Jalil Bethea for 1 year. Not because he's going pro, but because he's buried in the bench. If you have a 5-star recruit, arguably, if not the highest recruit ever in your program's history.
No, it is. It is that.
You play him.
Yeah. I mean,
this is not news. Even if he's not ready, you play him.
Yeah. I mean, that was one of my takeaways, which is Miami will have to do extremely well in conference play after this non-conference performance.
Oh, they can't defend.
I just said they will have to. I don't think they will. I think they'll have to if they want to do anything. But I mean, yeah, we talked about this team as a tier 2 lock to make the tournament. They had a decent transfer class. Talent on paper is there, but we overestimated the role Bethea will have. And if I'm Jeremy Larinaga at the moment, give the keys to the season to him. Let him do whatever he wants. I don't care if we don't win another game, but if you ever want to recruit another 5-star again, get this guy in the game. Right? He was the 7th overall player in the country. It doesn't. Your season's almost chalked already. You've just dropped 4 in a row to 3 out of the 4 mid-major and below teams.
And they're about to play.
Arkansas, Clemson, and Tennessee. They got a little bit of non-conference in there, but that doesn't mean anything. They've lost this before they get into the ACC, where they play Duke twice.
Here's an example. Jalen Blackman was a 21-point scorer at Stetson on decent efficiency.
Yeah.
This year, his minutes are way down. His shot attempts are in half. Well,
that's expected, but the thing is, you just have like Matthew Cleveland. I know he came off the bench for a little bit. He's only averaging 8 points a game. Rebounding, Brandon Johnson is ahead by a wide margin, even though Lynn Kidd is taller. Miami's had problems for years with their big depth. They have 2 solid bigs, but nothing else. Rebounding is down, and Bethea is playing 13 minutes a game. Jim's got to figure some stuff out ASAP. Their next game is Arkansas, I think, in 2 days.
Bloodbath.
So, at Miami.
Bloodbath. Whatever the spread is, bet. What the? Some guy just drove over our lawn, but that's okay.
That's what mid-major teams are doing in Miami. Yeah, so that was... You got one more you feel sorry for, or is this yourself to end it off? Yeah. All right, so we'll get into a couple more takeaways before we get into our surprises. First, for me, Auburn is the best team in the country. I don't care if Kansas is ranked number 1. Auburn should be ranked number 1. I don't care if Kansas is still undefeated. Auburn is the best team in the country. They have beaten better teams. They have better player. Janai Broome is the clear-cut player of the year at the moment. They're menaces defensively. If you saw that Houston game, they freaking beat Houston at their own game, which we'll touch on in a second. They beat Houston. They beat Iowa State. They beat North Carolina. They beat Memphis. They won Maui. If you've been looking at the numbers that my guy Janai Broome's putting up, he's averaging 21 points a game, 13 boards, 60% from the field.
Player of the year.
3 blocks a game.
Player of the year.
Yeah. He leads them. He also leads them in assists at 3.5 in almost every major statistical category. And then they have solid depth. Obviously, he's their guy. But Chad Baker-Mazara, Denver Jones, Chaney Johnson, Miles Kelly, Tahad Pettiford has been some really strong freshman performances. Dylan Cardwell, the vet. I mean, they have a lot of experience. They have a lot of talent. Bruce Pearl is as good as anyone in the country coaching. For me, they're the best team in the country. Now, let me get one more thing. The only issue is they play in the best conference in the country. So they're going to, they've succeeded in their tough tests so far, but they're going to be challenged, which will help them in the tournament, but they're going to go against Gauntlet coming up.
They're in my top 5. I'm not ready to anoint them yet. I agree. They have had probably the best non-conference season to date. And I agree with everything you said. Dylan Cardwell. There are games I've seen where he just looks like a wrecker.
A man on a mission.
Just grabbing every board in sight, and that's with Janai Broome on the floor.
Yeah.
I don't love their outside shooting, but they defend so well. It's not a huge problem. So I agree. They're a revelation.
And,
not a revelation. We said they were really good.
Yeah.
Maybe not first, second in the country good.
Also shout out to Bruce Pearl for scheduling such a tough non-con, because they play Duke at Duke on the 4th. They play Ohio State. They play Purdue. before getting into the SEC play. So they'll play about 6 ranked teams in their non-conference, and then they'll play a litany of ranked SEC teams, which is the best conference in the country. But they're looking scary right now, sitting at 7-0. Now, I did mention Houston, and one of my takes about Houston is this Houston team just can't win a close game. And going into the season, they showed Kelvin Sampson Houston teams in overtime were very good at winning those close games. So far, they lost to Auburn by 5. They lost to Alabama in overtime by 5. They lost to San Diego State last night by 3 in overtime. I mean, what's wrong with this Houston team?
It's a couple things. They lack another scorer, and Uzan has been good at times, but he has proved he's no replacement for Jamal Shed.
At the 1, yeah.
And I shudder every time I see it, because now Emmanuel Sharp is really your 1.
Well, LJ Cryer.
No, I mean
at the
point.
Yeah, well, you can Crier's a scorer, but he's the size of a 1.
And I hesitate. I think Cryer's the alpha, but I'm not sure he's always an alpha. He's a little too inconsistent.
Yeah.
I think the team will be fine.
It's Kelvin Sampson.
And yeah, the Big 12 is tough, but I think they'll eventually find their footing. They have no depth. I mean, very little depth. And if they lose a key rotation player, it's trouble. Their bigs are exactly what they are. They reflect,
but
they rebound, defend, and don't score. And block shots.
Yeah, block shots. I mean, I kind of expected, they're not putting up a ton of points per game. I kind of expected that with that defense first mentality. And then on paper, they don't have a Shed. But I would have just expected them to have a little bit more success so far. I mean, right now they're 4-3. Obviously, they've played a very tough schedule. Props to them, but they haven't won any of those tough games.
They pulled a UConn. They lost 3 in a row. They pulled a Miami.
No, they didn't lose 3 in a row. They had a little. They beat Notre Dame.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Finally, or actually, I have 2 more takes. My last take, second to last take, is that the 2022 UNC backcourt has severe issues in their respective spots. And we'll start out with the one still at UNC, because UNC's gone through some struggles. They're also 4-3. My guy RJ Davis, right? Numbers look good, 18.5. Then you look at the efficiency. He is shooting 36% from the field, and his specialty to 3-ball, 27% through 7 games, and of course, insane volume because he's RJ Davis. They got some stuff to figure out there in Chapel Hill.
Oh, I agree. And one of my negative surprises was how poorly the 2 former ones there, Davis and Caleb.
Well, that's why I said that backcourt. I wanted to start out with RJ Davis, but Caleb Love, we know who he is, right? This year, he was shooting 38% from the field, 28% from 3. And you're like, wow, that's awful. No, this is who he is. Because guess what? He has shot over 40% from the field once in his 5-year career. This guy is the Pac-12 Player of the Year last year. People were like, they love him. But I'll just read you his field goal percentages through 5 years. 31, 37, 38, 41, 38. He's this great scorer, and guess what? He's only shot in the 30s from 3 as this great scorer twice. I severely think he's overrated, and I'm not trying to come super angry and hard and down on him, but
no, it's not a bad take at all, and he made the right decision because RJ Davis takes a lot of shots.
No, I'm not.
And he realized,
it's time for him to go. Okay, apologize for the tirade on my guy Caleb Love, but my final take is that there is no 2023 UConn or 2021 Baylor this year. I know I was super high on Auburn in this past segment, but there's going to be a lot of parity, I think, this year, especially in the SEC where there's so many ranked teams, in the Big 12, but I don't think there's going to be one team that comes out going into the tournament that you're like, wow, favorite by far.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I don't think there's a power team, which is a segue into my top 5.
Okay, you have top 5 for us?
Sort of.
Right.
I have a top 3 because I can't decide on the other ones. One we already mentioned, Auburn, clearly a top 5. Kansas, Kansas hasn't meshed well. Some of the guys they brought in, AJ Store, they haven't shown what they could do. Zeke Mayo has. I just think they need more time to coalesce. They haven't been bad. They're undefeated, and they've played a couple
Yeah,
tough
but their
teams.
chemistry is not it right now.
No, they're not where they need to be. But I think they're good enough to figure it out.
Yeah, but I do think some of those guys that transferred there, I don't know what they were thinking. I know Bill Self, they said in a segment on ESPN, he was so last year his depth wasn't there when Kevin McCullough went down, so he was so all in on bringing in a bunch of good guys, which they did. But they're paying AJ Storr 1.5 to sit on the bench, like he doesn't play. Rylan Griffin plays, but he gets like 5 shots a game.
Yeah, well, Store's averaging like 9 a game.
I don't know if it's that high.
It's not like he's been
Every close game I've seen,
abysmal.
he is not in the game at the very end. And he's averaging 9 a game, but you know what he averaged at Wisconsin last year? 17.
Yeah.
You know he would have probably got drafted. Yeah, he's making 1.5, but what's he gonna make in the NBA next year? That draft stock's down.
But they have a lot of experience.
They have so much talent.
They'll figure it out.
I mean, they have what is it? They have 7 guys averaging above 8 points a game, and then they have David Coy averaging 6, who he plays a good amount for them. But I just think sometimes there aren't enough balls to go around.
I mean, again, I think Self will figure it out. Right now, you can't deny they're a top 5 team.
Yeah, I agree with you. I just think I don't know if their chemistry will ever reach what their potential could be.
Fair. My third lock, if you will, and I don't really feel that strongly, is kind of a mini surprise, is Marquette. They're undefeated. They haven't been really tested. They did play Purdue and Maryland. They didn't play an MTE like these other teams, but they've got guys, and they've got Shaka Smart, who seems to have regained his mojo after a semi-disastrous Texas run. Marquette is the only team I feel comfortable saying is top 5. There are other teams floating out there. You know, Alabama's still a good team. Tennessee's a really good team. Duke, I think, is going to rebound. But I just don't feel comfortable putting anybody else up there except these 3.
Yeah, and I'll say 4.
No, I said 3.
Yeah, only
Kansas, Auburn, Marquette.
Yeah, I mean, Marquette hasn't had a tough schedule, but they did beat Purdue by 20. And, I mean, I said in our Big East preview, Cam Jones is going to be one of the premier players in the country. He's averaging 20 a game. He's a baller. David Joplin's taking a big step up, averaging 16. You know, the depth isn't like, wow, in terms of names, but they're making it work. They're 8-0. Shaka Smart. And the Big East is trash.
Yeah.
So they should do just fine.
Seton Hall.
Lost to Monmouth by double digits, who was winless. Now, good thing for Seton Hall is have a good. Monmouth was the highest rated KenPom team that was winless.
Wow.
So they lost to the best winless team.
That's an ESPN stat. There you go.
Yeah, they. I mean, I don't even want to talk about them. I mean, the Canes also lost Charleston Southern, so let's not throw stones.
Creighton
has some big issues, big issues. They have similar Arizona issues where they are losing.
At a rapid clip.
Kalkbrenner started out the season with 44, and then they had a game where he took 1 shot.
Yeah. Yeah. That's my top 5, except it's 3.
All right. Any surprise again?
Got some surprises. We'll roll through these. Oregon, I think, has been not a massive surprise, but certainly a very pleasant surprise, beating Alabama.
They're also 8-0. They won the Players Era tournament.
Yeah. I liked them. I don't remember.
I think I had them tier 3, I believe. I did think Jackson Shelstad was going to be the alpha. It's turned out that he's not.
Yeah.
Nate Biddle, out of nowhere, in his 5th year in college basketball.
Yeah, and Brandon Angel, the transfer from Stanford, has been not anything you'd look on paper, but it's very solid.
Yeah. I mean, I underestimated their transfer class to replace that void that they lost in N'Faly Dante and Cousinard.
Yep.
Kwame Evans, though, for them, has not taken that sophomore leap that many thought he would as a former McDonald's All-American.
Or Mookie Cook.
Or Mookie Cook. However, their experience and depth at the top is doing them well.
Yep.
And the Big Ten's kind of down, so they should do fine as a member of the Big Ten.
The Big Ten's is barely better than the Big East. Barely. Their best team, Indiana, got smoked
by Louisville.
By an unranked Louisville.
And I will have to say, well, Oregon is their best team at the moment.
Yeah.
I wanted to say this. I didn't know how to phrase it as a takeaway, but the two teams of mercenaries, USC and Louisville, are struggling.
Louisville's not struggling.
They have like 2-3 losses. I know they made it to the championship game, but they're not doing as bad as USC.
USC scored 36 points. I thought Desmond Claude was their alpha. Or failing at St. Thomas. How do you score 36 points?
Yeah, against St. Mary's.
I think Pat Kelsey's done a wonderful job.
I agree with you, but there's also like Louisville has issues. Look, I know they made it to the Baja Mar Championship.
Jizzle James has been
that guy's at Cincinnati. I don't know what,
but he's very good.
Like I said in the preview, they're 5-2, which I went to the wrong page. I apologize. Me and my ESPN up. They're 5-2 at the moment. They lost to Tennessee and they lost to OU. I'm not saying they're bad. I'm just saying I think they had issues. Did you watch the end of the game? Chucky Hepburn gave the guy the ball.
Yeah, well, it's because they don't have Jizzle James.
Yeah, one team has Jizzle James. But USC, the team of mercenaries, has...
Yeah, I have them under a sort of a negative take. Another team in Louisville State, however... No, I'm sorry. Not Louisville State. In Tennessee State.
Yeah, I suck at the alphabet. He sucks at geography.
Memphis. Tell me where the Pacific Ocean is. Memphis has been a surprise. Their backcourt is elite. They may have the best backcourt in the country with PJ Haggerty, Hunter, and drawing a blank.
Mikey Williams.
Not Mikey Williams.
Colby Rogers.
Those three guys can go. They don't have any bigs of. They have Dane Danger,
Cisa,
and Cisa. That kind of.
No, they have no
they
depth.
They combine into one player, but they can't play 6 on the court at once. But they've been far better than expected. We didn't preview some of these other conferences, so we didn't rate Gonzaga or Memphis or some of those teams. But Memphis has been I think a pleasant surprise. Yeah. Along with Pitt.
Yeah.
In the Big ACC. Sorry, I'm going back in time. They have been very good. I think they're 7.
They're 7-1. Their only loss against Wisconsin.
So that's a credible loss. They've got some young talent and some guys who've stepped up.
They got 2 really good players in Ishmael Leggett and Jalen Lowe. Leggett was the ACC 6th Man of the Year last year, and Lowe. There's been talks about some NBA potential with him.
Yep.
I mean, they're solid. I think they will be a team on the cusp of making the tournament. So yeah, a pleasant surprise considering I think I had them tier 4.
Yeah. I think Capel's done a very nice job with the team. I don't think I had them. If I had them higher, it's not much.
You got tier 4 too.
Then there's ASU. It's Arizona State.
Yeah.
They played Duke in a scrimmage before the season, missing just one ball, and
spanked.
They got trashed. 40 points, something like that.
Yeah. Mine's 50, bro.
But since then, they have been.
All right, but let me say one thing.
On fire.
They lost to Gonzaga in a really good game.
Yeah.
They only lost by 8, but they have beaten nobody else. They are 7-1.
Yeah.
Which, props to them. But I do think, the kid Joseph Sonone reclass up as a freshman, leading them in scoring. Adam Miller's he's only putting up 9 a game. Surprising. But I want to say one thing about Jaden Quaintance. I said this in the car, I think, a week or 2 ago. He was a 5-star top 10 kid in the country. Committed to Kentucky originally, and then he went to ASU. I do not understand why top prospects continually go to ASU, where your draft stock goes to die. And I'm Sonone, has been balling out. Think about how many top recruits have gone to Bobby Hurley and not got drafted. Josh Christopher was a top 10 player in the country. He was barely a first round. He's in the G League right now. Marvin Bagley's brother, Marcus Bagley, after his first or second year in college, projected lottery, he like didn't play another game for them, surprisingly. They have so much talent. They had last year. They had Frankie Collins. They've had Adam Miller. They had another really big time recruit. And I just don't think he is a coach that puts people in the league.
Okay.
So that was my thing with Jaden Quaintance. I don't know why you go to ASU.
I'm just saying, after that exhibition game, you would have thought Arizona State is going to be horrendous, and they still might, but so far they've been fine. Then we're going to couple smaller schools. Drake.
Well, they're always good, even though they lost their coach, DeVries.
They lost their coach and the best player in program history. They mauled Miami, and they looked so efficient.
Well, anyone can maul Miami.
Yeah, but they looked so efficient. That kid, Bennett Sturts, was amazing. And the coach comes from Division II. Very successful Division II coach, brought his players with him, and they looked seamless. I think they're going to do very well in their conference. Utah State lost their coach, and they have not skipped a beat at all. They haven't necessarily played the best schedule, but the kid Ian Martinez, very good guard, and they did beat Iowa. It's a decent win. So in that conference, I think they'll do fine. Nevada's in there. I think they're pretty solid. But they've been good. Another team, pleasant surprise, Georgia. Hasn't, again.
I thought I had them tier 3, and you looked at me like I was crazy, dude.
Yeah, Mike White is...
They got... All right, let's not give Mike White too much credit.
Well,
as a former Gator.
Another pleasant surprise. And also, perhaps he should have been in my players we should feel sad about. We missed him in the greatest basketball names going today. Always Right.
Rhode Island?
Yes. Missed him. Sorry.
Sorry, Mr. Wright.
Just discovered that you're always right.
Yeah. Can I say one thing about ASU? I've been doing a little research. Jaden Quaintance was their highest recruiting program history. He's pulling a Jaleel Bethea right now. The guy should get every ball ever. A couple guys, I'm sorry to cut you off, but they had Enoch Bokeh, right? Who's at Villanova right now.
Yes.
Did you know he was a 5-star? No, you didn't, because you know where he went after ASU?
Fresno State or something.
Was it Idaho State or Fresno State?
Or Idaho, one of those.
Yeah. He was a 5-star. Yeah, I bet you didn't know that. Tayshaun Cherry, you remember him seeing him on TV?
No.
5-star. In class 2018. We've seen him back in the day. So I'm just saying, they've had some very talented guys. They had Remy Martin, who won a natty with Kansas, not ASU.
Oh, he was good.
Very good.
Very good. So a couple negatives. We're gonna zip through these. We already talked about Davis and Love. Arizona, we've talked about. One of the teams that is confounding, and one of the players that's confounding, is Baylor and VJ Edgecombe. VJ Edgecombe is uber talented.
Yeah.
He's going to get drafted very high, regardless of how he plays this year. It's just he's that talented. But his games have been
roller coaster,
way up and down.
And I mean, I said in our Big 12 preview, I thought he was going to be the guy for them after that Bahamas international team showing and their international tour. And he hasn't been. He's been decent in some games and awful in others. Obviously, they got our guy Norchad just continuing to do what he always does.
Yep.
There's an award for most consistent player in the country. He's the front runner. And Jeremy Roach has been pretty good for them. He had that huge game winner against St. John's. But yeah, I agree with you. VJ Edgecombe, I won't say he's been a letdown for me, but he is not living up to my super high expectations I placed on him. Yeah,
and I said confounding because Baylor has a game where they beat a good St. John's team, probably the best game of the year so far. Edgecombe had a big shot down the stretch. They lack big depth. Beyond Norchad Omier, they have nothing, and he's an undersized big at that. But then they get absolutely smoked by Gonzaga, which I am not high on Gonzaga. I think Gonzaga has some, uh, well, among them, who's their alpha? Brayton Huff,
No. Graham EK.
but he's not.
He
He's a
scores. He puts the ball in the
consistent
basket.
low post scorer at times, but I don't like that team at all. And they've had
I
some
think they're
results
good.
that are up and down. But Baylor, who knows? Like they, from one game to the next, you don't know what you're going to get. Again, I think Edgecombe, very good. He's going to have some big performances, but he's also going to have some,
Freshman performance.
2-pointer
Yeah.
games. And then I think that's it for my list. There's a bunch of teams that don't have alphas. And we talked about USC, Arkansas, UConn. Arkansas, a team that's doing well, but you still don't know game to game who their guy is.
Well, I think that's. I could have told you that beginning of the year with that roster that Cal brought in.
Except for Janelle Davis,
who has had. I've heard rumors that he's still fighting off an injury that missed a lot of training camp, which could explain why he's only averaging 9 points a game. I've also seen a lot of complaints about how Cal's system is just not it. Whereas he was able to play in a fun, free system with Dusty May, and that led to success. So I've heard a couple things about that. But yeah, I would have thought he would. I mean, I had him as my number one transfer in the country.
Yeah, I did too. Kadary Richmond has not been very
Kadary
successful.
Richmond. We've had a couple high ranked transfers that have disappointed. And I want to look up one thing because I thought Kansas State was going to be really good.
Oh,
They're 5-2 at the moment, but they did lose to a not great LSU, and they lost to Liberty. And I was very high on Coleman Hawkins as a transfer. He's averaging 9 a game. He's still being pretty versatile, but only shooting 37% from the field. I mean, you were pretty high on Kansas State. I mean, a loss to Liberty is just.
But Liberty's actually
They're always good.
Either undefeated or have one loss.
You're Kansas State in the Big 12.
Yeah, I agree.
And you have so much talent. And then one last thing, my guy Will Wade, American Gangster.
Yes.
McNeese. I had McNeese as a borderline top 25 team going into the season, and they have just been not it. They have, let me see how many losses they have. They have at the moment 4-3, and they play a decent non-con. They lost to Alabama. You can't blame them. They also lost to Liberty, so apparently Liberty's a powerhouse.
Yeah.
They lost to San Diego State, South Dakota State, not San Diego. Yeah. But they had a Power 5 roster in the Southland Conference with Will Wade, a Power 5 coach.
Yeah.
So I thought they were just going to be dominant, like a Grand Canyon last year, or James Madison, and they just haven't been so far.
My last word, we talked about Arizona State as being a surprise, haven't really been tested. A team that is undefeated, near and dear to your heart, also hasn't been tested. I'm not sure the best team they've played, Florida.
You say this is a surprise?
What's a surprise?
Are you calling them a surprise?
No, I'm not calling them a surprise. They're a very good team. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But we're going to find out because Arizona State is going to play UF. I believe they're playing very soon. I'm going to double check it.
I think you're actually. They do. UF hasn't played, great competition at the moment. They do play Virginia, which
is awful, like I predicted.
On December 4th as part of the SEC ACC Challenge. They also play UNC as part of the Jumpman Invitational coming up. And then, of course, SEC speaks for itself. Let's see. I think you're right. They do play ASU, I think in Atlanta. They do play ASU as part of a neutral site game, Holiday Hoopsgiving in Atlanta. So we will see a battle of, two pretty solid teams, but I expect Florida to mop the floor with them.
Yeah, no, don't get me wrong. Florida's very talented.
I mean, if you watched I don't know why you'd watch this game, but what they did to Wichita State.
Yeah,
But I mean,
that was.
They were up 44 at one point.
Yeah. I hesitate to call that tournament a true MT.
Well, yeah, I said, why would you be watching? But if you were watching, I mean, it got ugly.
But for the teams that didn't play in MTEs, I don't think Purdue played an MTE.
Purdue's had a great schedule though. You can't blame.
No, but I'm just saying, if you haven't played in an MTE, I don't think your schedule. I mean, Kansas. Is
Purdue's played Alabama, Marquette, and Ole Miss. They actually were, and they're in the Ole Miss tournament.
Oh, the Ole Miss tournament. Right. Well, it's early. We're gonna circle back and recap early season NBA.
Yep.
I think that's our next one, unless we have an emergency podcast.
But yeah, that's it for our Feast Week takes and takeaways. Let us know in the comments below if you disagree or agree, and like and subscribe, and we will see you on the next episode. Peace.